So it looked like this whole MVP situation is getting very, very spooky. Now, Caitlin Clark is losing this MVP race by 200,000 votes after recapturing the league late yesterday. Now, I know some of you guys is wondering, how do you vote and all of that stuff? So I'm going to take you guys through this once again and show you guys how many people is saying that Paige Bueckers fans, somebody possibly bought some bots to vote for Paige Bueckers.
Apparently, scoring the most points, carrying your team, and making defenses look completely outmatched isn't enough to lock up MVP anymore, because Caitlin Clark is somehow staring at a 200,000 vote deficit like she stepped into the wrong timeline. And what makes it even more surprising isn't just that she's trailing, it's who she's trailing. Paige Bueckers has surged into the conversation, picking up votes at a pace that feels like a Black Friday rush, as if the rest of the internet just got the memo all at once.
Damn, it is always something. It's always something going on. We get some spectacular news, and then we get some weird stuff that's going on in terms of this WNBA, Caitlin Clark. It's a lot of nonsense going on. One, she absolutely slaughtered the unrivaled ratings. I mean, put them to complete shame. That it's not her, it's everybody thing.
Now let's slow this down, because this is where things start getting interesting. Clark has been doing exactly what usually makes MVP voting pretty straightforward, being clearly better than most of the competition. She's leading in scoring, dictating the pace, drawing defenders everywhere she goes, and doing it all while not even starting every game.
But there's something that's transpiring right in front of our face that I think if you've been paying attention at all since 2024, when Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, then you see this and you're seeing the outcome and you're going, something is very wrong here. Something is not right. And I'm talking about FIBA. They have posted, who's your San Juan, Puerto Rico MVP?
Imagine putting up the most points in the tournament while sometimes coming off the bench like it's just a side quest. And yet, somehow that's not enough to lead the MVP race. Not just trailing, but far behind by a margin of 200,000 votes. That's not a close call or a we'll see how it ends kind of race. That's the kind of gap that makes you wonder how the voting even unfolded in the first place.
Bots, or they're picking Paige to win. I don't know who's behind this. This is all allegedly, but this is the same flyer from yesterday. So when I was looking at this yesterday, Caitlin Clark's face, even though she was winning in votes, did not change to the top of the person that was leading in votes. So this is the second time today I done clicked on here and Paige is winning. Now, what makes this more interesting is you scroll down here, these are the votes, right? So this is Paige winning, nearly reaching 1 million votes. She's nearly at 1 million. She's at 900.
Which is where the internet does what it does best. It starts squinting at the numbers like they don't quite add up. Fans are refreshing, double-checking, and still seeing the same result. Paige Bueckers sitting comfortably in the lead, climbing toward 1 million votes as if it's the most natural thing in the world. And that's when the conversation really starts to pick up.
So, yeah, this is being taken over by bots. This is absolutely being taken over by bots. And it is the funniest. This is the funniest thing ever. This is the funniest thing ever. Like, FIBA have gone out of their way to start to say that this is not actually for MVP. That it is not actually for MVP. They've literally had to come out and say this fan vote is not an official statement from FIBA.
Not loud accusations, not courtroom level drama, just that collective, subtle eyebrow raise that says, okay, but how? Because if you trace the numbers, the attention, the viewership, the engagement, the entire gravitational pull of women's basketball right now, it all keeps circling back to one name. Clark has been the headline, the highlight, the reason fans who once thought a pick and roll was a sushi order are suddenly glued to full games. So when the vote count tells a different story, it doesn't just feel surprising, it feels off. To be clear, Paige Bueckers isn't some random name pulled from a hat. She's elite, polished, and absolutely worthy of recognition. This isn't about taking her down. It's about the disconnect between the reality fans are witnessing and what the votes are reflecting. Are all the votes coming from the same kind of enthusiasm? Because when a sudden surge flips expectations on its head, the word bots inevitably starts floating around, not confirmed, not proven, but definitely invited to the conversation.
Okay, and then we got Paige Beckers fans out here rigging the MVP votes for FIBA. Is that what's going on, you guys? We got to break this thing down, man. Welcome to me. Caitlin Clark does 334,000 viewers on True TV. And let's be real, we're used to Caitlin Clark hovering around that million. Y'all done turned so many people off and ruined it. Y'all done ran a bunch of people off already. I mean, you called a bunch of them racist and started fake investigations and all types of other stuff. I mean, Rachel Demita already put it so eloquently about how you guys have done everything you can to shun the fans away because they are Caitlin Clark fans.
And that's where it gets even more interesting, because this isn't happening in isolation. Hovering over everything is FIBA, the governing body that operates with a mix of structure and a bit of mystery that keeps fans guessing. People are now looking at the situation and wondering how a player who's clearly been the engine for her team isn't even leading the public MVP vote. It creates a strange disconnect, where performance and recognition don't seem to line up. And when that gap shows up, people naturally start looking for explanations. Not because they want to jump to conclusions, but because it's hard to accept that the most dominant player on the floor might not be the most recognized within the system. Clark's impact isn't subtle. It's loud, measurable, and obvious to anyone watching. She's not quietly efficient, she's shaping the game in real time. But while fans try to make sense of the MVP race, there's a bigger backdrop: the ongoing conversations about the league's future. As players elevate the sport with their performances, the business side is working through negotiations around revenue, salaries, and what this growth actually means moving forward.
These are the candidates: Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, what? Ryan Howard. I can see Howard being in the mix here because her scoring has been lights out. Jackie Young, and then a bunch of other players down here. And all I can tell you is I don't know what happened, because I went over and voted once early this morning. And Caitlin Clark was running away with this joker. And then all of a sudden, this happened. I don't have any idea how Paige Beckers got this many votes this quickly.
On one side, players are pushing for a larger share of the pie, pointing out that they're the reason the pie has grown in the first place. On the other side, the league is looking at the numbers and trying to navigate what it would mean to commit hundreds of millions more. And in the middle of it all, you have a new generation of players watching closely, wondering what the league will look like by the time they step into it. That's why the MVP conversation starts to feel symbolic. If the system can't clearly reward the top performer in a tournament, people begin to question how everything else is being evaluated. Meanwhile, Clark keeps doing the most difficult thing for anyone trying to argue against her. She keeps performing. She keeps scoring, keeps creating, keeps putting up numbers that make the debate harder with every game. Each performance adds more evidence, shifting the question from, is she the MVP? to, how is this even still a discussion? And yet, the votes tell a different story. That disconnect is what makes the whole situation feel less like a typical award race and more like something unresolved, something people are still trying to understand.
It's created so to enhance the experience for fans. And both sides are botting right now. So Caitlin Clark, there's about what, 800 in the difference? There has been 800 in the difference exactly for the last.
So now the clock is ticking. The tournament is wrapping up, the votes are still climbing, and somewhere in all of this, a final result is about to be announced. When that moment comes, it won't just crown a winner. It will answer a bigger question that's been hanging over everything. Was this a fair fight that simply led to an unexpected outcome? Or does it reveal that the game off the court is more complicated than what's happening on it? The answer will land differently depending on who you ask. If the result holds, it won't just feel like an upset, it will spark debate. Clark has been one of the most productive players on the floor, not in a hidden or hard-to-read way, but in a clear, undeniable one. Every performance seems to add more weight to the case in her favor. Meanwhile, the player at the center of the vote lead, Paige Buchers, continues to climb toward that million-vote mark, seemingly unbothered by the scrutiny, even as questions keep building around the gap between perception and the numbers. And that's where things start to feel less like a simple competition and more like a broader moment of reflection. When results and expectations don't line up, it raises a deeper question. How far can numbers drift from public perception before people start to question how those numbers are produced in the first place?
FIBA World Cup posted this blog post and it says, vote, who has been the MVP in San Juan? When I tell you that the fans are botting votes, okay? So when I first saw this morning, they had it listed as a percentage, like which player was winning by percentage. So at the time that I first looked at it, Caitlin Clark had like 36% of the votes and she was number one. And then a player from Spain, Raquel Carrera, who is now in 6th, by the way, as I'm looking at this at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. She is now in 6th place. She was 2nd with
right now we're getting closer to finding out where this all lands. The gap isn't small enough to ignore, but it's not so large that it feels entirely out of reach either. It sits in that uncomfortable middle space where both outcomes still feel possible, just uncertain enough to keep everyone paying attention. Every time Paige Buchers adds to her lead, the same question keeps coming up. Where are these votes coming from? Because if this were a tight race, nobody would think twice. A few thousand votes either way would just feel like a real battle between two elite players with strong fan bases. But a margin like 200,000 changes the tone of the conversation entirely. When numbers move that quickly, people naturally start looking for patterns and trying to make sense of what they're seeing. Not because there's a clear answer, but because the scale of it invites curiosity, and sometimes skepticism. Still, at the end of the day, it remains a matter of perspective, shaped by how people interpret the numbers in front of them.
Lead, and I voted. Next thing you know, Paige Buchers has a big lead over Caitlin Clark being MVP. Now, look, Paige Buchers has a big social media presence, so I'm not surprised that she's in the race. But come on now, when it comes to reality, when it comes to basketball, does Paige Buchers really deserve MVP?
And the longer the situation remains unclear, the more the questions tend to grow. With FIBA overseeing the process, attention naturally shifts to the structure itself, how voting is monitored, what safeguards are in place, and how transparency is handled when results change quickly. Fans start asking what explains the shifts, and whether there's a clear framework behind the numbers. Because at the end of the day, sports fans are used to outcomes. What they're less comfortable with is uncertainty about how those outcomes come together. It's one thing to see a player lose, it's another to feel unclear about how the result was determined. That's why this gap can feel more like a contradiction than a simple difference of opinion. If value is being measured, people want to understand the criteria behind that measurement. And when the process isn't fully visible, it naturally invites more questions about how everything is being evaluated. It turns what should be a straightforward race into something more complex. A conversation about not just who is being recognized, but how that recognition is decided.
Plays out. And when I was 3 minutes into that video, Caitlin Clark was on 33,000 and Paige Buchers was on 28 or 29,000. They were Caitlin Clark. It took Caitlin Clark 2 hours to go from 30 to 33,000. In the last 15 minutes, Caitlin Clark has gone from for 33,000 to 49.
Because just as this MVP race is getting more attention, the broader world of women's basketball is also going through a period of change behind the scenes. Discussions about growth, finances, and the future direction of the league. So now you have two storylines unfolding at once. On the court, a player is putting together a strong case for MVP through performance. Off the court, the voting is producing results that don't always line up neatly with what people are seeing in games. And in the middle, fans are trying to make sense of both. Moments like this can shift how people think about awards like MVP. It moves the conversation beyond just performance and into how recognition is shaped. By fans, by visibility, and by engagement. That's where the debate comes from. People aren't just asking who played the best, they're also asking how those performances are being recognized and understood. And even after the final result, that conversation is likely to continue.